The year is 1921, and extreme feminist Margaret Sanger has just created the Birth Control Federation of America, launching an organization that will someday assist in murdering over 70 million unborn babies as the now infamous group Planned Parenthood. But for now, Sanger has another agenda at play, an anti-black, racist agenda that will embed itself into her organization of death for decades. I'm Haddon Lockyer, and this is Exposed. Margaret Sanger left a legacy. To liberals, Sanger left a legacy of female empowerment and the option to choose which of your babies you wanted to keep alive. To conservatives, however, Sanger left a much different legacy. A legacy of infanticide, the corruption of the American home, and a massively negative effect on U.S. society as a whole. But no matter what you think of Margaret Sanger, one fact cannot be ignored. She was a racist, an extreme racist, and it gets worse. Sanger, a supporter of the eugenics movement, used her organization against the so-called breeds of people she disliked. In more frank terms, Margaret Sanger wanted Americans to abort African Americans and Latinos. In 1939, Sanger sent a letter to African American doctor C.J. Gamble. In the 3-page address, Sanger told Gamble of her plans to hire a black doctor full-time to her clinic. Sanger felt that a, quote, full-time Negro physician, end quote, would help her win the trust of black Americans. She said that Gamble could help them get rid of their, quote, ignorance, superstitions, and doubt, end quote, about her organization. So, with Gamble by her side, Sanger launched the controversial Negro Project. Through this project, Sanger spread the message that poverty concerns in largely black areas of the United States could be fixed if more African Americans turned to abortions and other forms of birth control. But that isn't all. USA Today quoted Sanger claiming that her use of Planned Parenthood for eugenics could help with the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. Quote, then, in an article titled A Better Race Through Birth Control, Sanger wrote, quote, given birth control, the unfit will voluntarily eliminate their kind, and birth control does not mean contraception indiscriminately practiced. It means the release of cultivation of the better elements in our society. The reality is that the people in control don't want you to know the truth about Margaret Sanger and her Birth Control Federation of America, now Planned Parenthood. They want you to brush over her past, scoop it under the rug, and move on. In fact, many of Sanger's articles and archives are now lost to the world because of New York University. After journalists began shining the light on Sanger's past, the university nuked their web pages hosting much of Sanger's writing. Following the links to read Sanger's articles now simply brings up error messages. Even so, not all of Sanger's past can be hid, as we've already displayed, and because of that, Planned Parenthood is trying to distance itself from their racist founder. In 2020, for example, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York announced that they would remove Sanger's name from its Manhattan abortion vending location due to Sanger's history with the eugenics movement. The main Planned Parenthood website also has an article titled Opposition Claims about Margaret Sanger, where they point out Sanger's erroneous and dark past. In reality, Planned Parenthood hasn't exactly fought racism, however. In fact, at times, the organization has condoned it, at least when money is involved. In one of his earliest stings, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas fame caught multiple Planned Parenthood employees pledging to allow donor money to go towards the executing of babies from specific races if the donor so requested. Don't believe me? You don't have to believe me. I have the audio. Give it a listen.
Planned Parenthood Administration, this is Lisa.
Hi, I'm interested in making a donation today.
Let me put you through to Tim in our development office.
Is there anyone I can speak with right now?
Me.
Mm-hmm. And who am I speaking with now?
My name is Lisa.
What's your position?
Administrative assistant.
Okay. When I underwrite abortion, does that apply to minorities too?
If you specifically want it to underwrite an abortion for a minority person, you can target it that way. You can specify that that's how you want it spent.
Okay, yeah, because there's definitely way too many black people in Ohio, so I'm just trying to do my part.
Okay, whatever.
Well, blacks especially need abortions too, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, for whatever reason, we'll accept the money.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You would think that as time went on, Planned Parenthood would have improved. But how can an organization that makes millions, killing babies, improve morally? In June of 2020, Planned Parenthood of Greater New York accused the branch director, Laura McQuaid, of being a toxic leader. The employees wrote, quote, "Planned Parenthood was founded by a racist white woman, and while efforts have been made to undo some of the harm from institutional racism, many of these issues have worsened under McQuaid's tenure. After years of complaints from staff about issues of systemic racism, pay inequity, and lack of upward mobility for black staff, highly paid consultants were brought in 3 separate times to assess the situation. Each time, employees of color were brutally honest about their experiences. But nothing changed." End quote. The covered-up past of Margaret Sanger is deep, dark, and depressing. However, it must be exposed. They don't want you to know the truth about Margaret Sanger or Planned Parenthood. The University of New York doesn't want you to know the truth about Margaret Sanger. Planned Parenthood doesn't want you to know the truth about themselves and their founder. And that's all the more reason we must share the truth. Yes, things will be suppressed, but they will never be silenced. We'll make sure of it. It's kind of our job, after all. But if you think the past of Margaret Sanger is dark, wait till you hear about George Floyd. Coming up on the next episode of Exposed.